engineer in specializing in end-user compute. End-user compute is any device that is on the edge or that the user might be using. And today we've asked Terry to talk us through some of the concept around modern management or the IT experience for that matter. And then we'll have some discussions around it. And please, if you've got questions, keep your questions handy. We'll have a slot towards the end where we can start getting into questions and discussions as well. So Terry, if I can hand over to you, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Feroz. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Let me just quickly share my screen. Let me share this here. Great. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, it's up, Terry.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Feroz. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I really appreciate the time that you made to join the session. And as Feroz says, my name's Terry Elkington. I've been with VMware now for 10 years, looking after the end-user computing estate, which grew quite considerably over the last 10 years, if I can, well, 9 or 8 years that I've been there. Moving from just the virtual desktop components or VDI components to really a comprehensive end-user computing strategy that we can apply to end customers. And today, as the previous session that we had, or previous breakout session we had, was around the user experience. But today I want to actually talk to you about the IT experience. In modern management, it's actually broken into was previously mentioned or named modern management. Moving from a traditional management way of managing your devices and end users out there. But IT experience actually sums it up a lot better, because it's actually the IT guys or the IT side of the business that actually needs to make sure that that everything runs smoothly. And if the IT experience is not great, obviously the end user experience won't be that fantastic as well. So if we look at our portfolio, or sort of our strategy around our end user computing side, we sort of have it broken up in four categories. The employee experience, which we had a session on before. The IT experience using modern management is the one that we're going to have a look at today. And then there's obviously the virtual desktops and application side of things, which became very relevant over the last 18 months, especially around the pandemic issue, providing anywhere workspace fitting into that as well. And then also, across all of them, the intrinsic security is really important. The security should not be a bolt-on. It actually should be something that comes as part of the solution, and that's why that's so important. But let's focus a little bit around the IT experience today. So if you look at where we come from, the evolution of mobile device management over the last couple of years really started off with bring your own device into companies, and we sort of started managing those mobile devices using specific mobile device management tools. One of them being AirWatch. There's a couple others on the market as well. And then obviously not just the device management, but also start managing the applications as well, mobile application management. But then customers also requested, content management to bring that all together as a solution to manage that specific mobile side of the business. And typically it was called enterprise mobility management, taking the device management together with the application management component, because obviously there's applications on the device, and then having that content as well being managed, especially organizations being quite worried about business content, and so be lost and compromised. But then there's another side of the business as well, a bigger side of the organization. And that's the Windows and application, Windows and also macOS management. In our region, macOS is not that huge. Obviously, us being part of a US company, macOS or iOS is actually quite a large component of a lot of companies, and it's becoming like that in South Africa as well for certain companies. People going for a Mac first approach, but Windows, as you know, is still the most comprehensive, or mostly used operating system and solution that companies use. And from a Windows management point of view, and obviously macOS as well, there's policies, there's personalization that needs to happen on these devices, applications that needs to go down, managing the operating system, and then also the hardware. That's also something that companies have different types of devices out there, different manufacturers, different OEMs. So that needs to be managed as well. And then tools, there's quite a lot of tools that customers use to manage these devices. Config Manager, System Center Config Manager, group policies is applied to make sure the devices are locked down and certain things are in place. Jamf maybe as a point solution to be used for macOS management, and then obviously things like Norton Ghost, Ultras, Ivanti, and those things to sort of image the devices, and so even Config Manager image the device and then push it out. Scripts to run certain things or configure things, put some registries things in place, and then obviously your updates and patching via WSUS. And all of these things were fantastic when we were still inside the corporate network. But work styles have changed over the last couple of years, not just as part of the pandemic, but as part of just the evolution of how people started to work. People don't go to the office anymore. They work from anywhere. People travel a lot. And also, obviously, with the implications of the pandemic, people now work mostly from home or from a different location. And companies saw that, or started to realize that it actually works. It can work, and it does work to have that type of work style. So modern management really needs to be taken into consideration to start moving away from this network-centric management policies or outlook that customers had. So, we brought it all together into something called Unified Endpoint Management. So what is Unified Endpoint Management? If you think of it, it's a nice couple of words, but really to try and figure out what it's all about is not always that clear to everyone. And all that it is, in fact, is taking the mobility management component or the enterprise mobility management side, as well as the PC lifecycle management, which you just discussed now, and combining these two into one solution, into one pane of glass to manage these different entities in a similar fashion. Obviously, there's differences, little differences in payloads that you push down to an iOS device, versus an Android device, and Windows 10 has got their own policies and their own ways of doing things, and patching is different. But managing it with one solution, or let's call it a solution. I don't want to call it a tool. One solution actually helps organizations to skill their staff in one solution instead of having point solution skills. If there's an issue, there's one solution that can be investigated and troubleshoot procedures can be simplified, because you don't have to worry about does it integrate with Jamf, does it integrate with System Center, is it now group policies causing the problem, is it Ultras that or is it a hardware issue? With this, it's so much easier to troubleshoot because it uses the same engine, it uses the same one single pane of glass, you can build your skills around that one solution. So, what is Workspace One Unified Endpoint Management from VMware? Well, it's our technology of managing the device lifecycle, or to do device lifecycle management. Onboarding, we got so many different ways of onboarding devices across the platforms, from the various Windows 10 onboarding methods to the same across Android, iOS, and macOS. It's not just one standard onboarding method. People have different needs. There's different use cases, and to have just one onboarding method really limits, your organization efficiency around processes. So we got really a huge amount of streamlined onboarding methods to fit any solution or any use case or any customer specific use case. But then when we onboarded those devices, there's then the second phase come into play, and that is doing the configuration of the device. And modern management is more around not so much imaging the device, the old way of imaging the device and then pushing it to the user and having those corporate images. specific corporate images for specific OEM, hardware OEMs, as well as for specific versions. It's more around being a lot more flexible around managing the device. And that's why it's called modern management. So that you can do over-the-air management outside of your corporate network. And that is very important. Once again, as I mentioned in our work styles that we have adopted over the last couple of years. And part of that is doing that configuration over the air as well, pushing down settings and policies to the device, irrespective where the device finds itself, outside or inside the corporate network. Do intelligent assignments around smart grouping. Is a device, maybe it's a HP, there's a mixture of HP, Dell, Lenovo devices out there, and even, obviously Samsung, LG, and as well as iOS devices out there. And maybe you want to target devices based on user groups. Maybe you want to target them based on an operating system level or a patch level, or even maybe OEM type, or various things. So intelligent assignments is really important, and that's what we have as part of Workspace One, a smart grouping, and then having that full application lifecycle management capability as well. So from distributing, packaging and distributing an application, right through to managing the application through its phases, maybe applying patches or maybe pushing down new versions of the application, up until the end where you want to remove the application or maybe retire the application, or if a person leaves the organization. But you also need to have enterprise integration as well, integrating into your Active Directory or your identity source, maybe your own certificate authority, or the certificate authority of your choice, like Entrust or those, or Microsoft Certificate Authority. That we also do with regard to with our unified endpoint management solution. And then we can also do device layout controls. And on Android, for example, we can push down a launcher application that actually takes over your home screen. Not takes over, but overlays on your home screen. And you can then push only specific applications to that launcher and manage it so that users can't get to settings and all kinds of stuff. So it's a great use case for corporate-owned devices where you want to really lock down the device. Maybe also things like scanners and rugged devices, as well as maybe in an organization with a fleet management. They issue maybe their drivers specific devices, Android devices, and we can lock it down in that sense. But also, apart from the device layouts, we also have a couple of new things added to the Windows side, Windows and macOS side as well. Sensors, where you can actually run PowerShell scripts and push it into a sensor or macOS scripts, and push the end result into a variable or a value, and that will be a sensor, and that can be used for reporting, or it could be used for automation, or even smart grouping things together based on a sensor. And then scripts. I mean, scripts has always been important to all customers, because nothing. If you want to automate something, you have to use a script, and that's something that we would supply with Workspace One as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention there is baselines. Baselines basically is creating a baseline, a group policy baseline, or a configuration baseline based on group policies, to ensure that that you always have that baseline across your organization. And that could be a CIS baseline, Common Internet Security baseline, or Windows 10 or Windows or Microsoft baseline, or you can create your own baseline. And we also link into Microsoft's CSP's configuration service provider policies, that we can create custom baselines or custom configurations based on those as well. We've got a tool that link into that. But after the device is configured, you also need to secure it. Make sure that we secure it by encrypting it, BitLocker encryption, for example, and then getting escrowing the recovery key back to the console or to the end user's self-service portal, so they can actually get access to that. And data loss prevention as well. In our mobile side, we got our containerized application that actually got our software development kit built into it, and you can then make sure that you you can control copy and paste functionality, save as functionality, as well as open in and so forth. functionality. And then for Windows, we link into App Locker. We can also link into the graph APIs of Office 365. And we have the capability, like many vendors in this space, to enterprise wipe or device wipe the endpoint. We can also enterprise reset it to take it back to a previous state in the Windows case. But this device wipe and enterprise wipe can be done by the administrators, or it can even be done by the user if he or she has got access to the self-service portal from another device, and for example, your device got stolen, or your device is compromised, or you lost it. You can device wipe it yourself without waiting for IT to do that for you. And then, day 2 onwards operations, having insights and analytics around what is happening on the devices out there in your organization, integrations with other systems like Carbon Black that we have from a security point of view, Lookout, Pradio, Wandera, as well as things like ServiceNow, the ServiceNow component from a help desk point of view, integrating to those, and then create automation. And apologies for the incorrect spelling of automation there. I see that is I only see that now. Apologies for that. But automation around automating specific tasks based on your intelligence and insights that you got from the data that you gathered from devices. Automating maybe patching, automating pushing down profiles or pushing applications based on various things, and have that self-service capability for the end user as well. But we also have a component that you can add on to remote management. So you can take over the device, screen share the device, and see what the user is doing on their side with their consent. And that's across the board, from Android, macOS, Windows, iOS. It's not just linked. It's not just a capability on Windows. So let's look at the onboarding side of things. As I mentioned, there's various ways of onboarding, but there's also various use cases and various ownership types of devices out there. We have our containerized applications and virtual and desktop application side of things for, from a container point of view. If you want to access applications inside your corporate network, or if you want to have a containerized mail application or web browser content management application, that is available as well as part of a container. And also, on the Android side, if you enroll your device with Android, there's obviously the Android for Business or Android for Enterprise component, which creates a container on itself that splits work and personal components from each other. And you can completely segregate the two, or you can have them talk to each other as well. But then we also have the registered mode. So people that do not, or customers or users that don't want to enroll their device, their own personal device as a BYOD device. And by the way, if they enroll it as a BYOD device or bring your own device, we have a privacy framework in place to do not touch their personal stuff, not collect their personal stuff or display their personal stuff. Only work-related applications or managed applications will be managed. But in a registered mode, the user will register the device with the Intelligent Hub, which is our let's call it agent that runs. And that will then link into what we call the Workspace One Access, which we had sessions on before, to provide a catalog of applications. And that registered mode gives you a couple of, we have a couple of capabilities with registered mode, but we're not really managing the device. We're actually not taking over and manage the device. And then, the OS partition portion, that's what I mentioned, the Android for Work, or the iOS has got something also called user enrollment. It's not as slick, in my opinion, as Android for Enterprise. Android for Enterprise gives you a clear split between your work and personal stuff. Where iOS user enrollment, you need to link. You have to have the Azure side of things and link a Apple ID to that. And then you have the full device management, the MDM enrollment, and that is usually corporate managed. A device gets, for example, Android device needs to be reset and enrolled with a token, with a stub, and then it's completely managed. Whatever you push down, that will be managed on the device. You get all the information from the device. a user can't go into well, they can go into an app store, Play Store, but it's only going to show the applications that's managed by your applications, not the public app store. And also, the Windows 10 side of things and macOS side of things, devices that's been issued to end users, their laptops, even maybe desktops, can be enrolled into this and get managed exactly in the same way as a PC Lifecycle Management tool manages them. So if you look at the provisioning methods or onboarding methods that we enable that across the board is we got out of the box enrollment functionality where a user gets the device and out of the box they can enroll the device, especially around Windows. Manual enrollment via the Intelligent Hub, downloading an agent, or via the browser and just enrolling the device, putting in the email address, or potentially just a server and a group ID that they need to connect to. The EMM token, that's the component where I mentioned where you need to reset potentially you have to reset your Android device, and then when it comes up and asking you for your credentials, you put in something like a Android for Work AFW #hub, which means it's a Workspace One enrollment, and it will automatically pull down the agent and the hub, Intelligent Hub, and enroll. NSE bump, from various manufacturers and phones. QR code, a person or a user can scan a QR code and it will automatically fill in the enrollment details. All that he needs to do is authenticate with his username and password, and it will be enrolled. And then factory provisioning a device at the factory, and we run that across various OEMs, Dell, Lenovo, and HP, where it gets enrolled with your corporate image potentially, or an image that you're comfortable with from organization, as well as a couple of preloaded applications, and then get shipped directly to the user. And when the user logs on, because it's enrolled with a staging account, when the user gets it, enters his credentials, and it automatically switch over to his ownership or his or her ownership, and get configured according to their profile. If you look at out-of-the-box enrollment, Workspace One enables for every out-of-the-box enrollment for every device from it's typically in most cases it gets run on Windows devices. So when the user opens it up, there's a couple of steps it goes through and it enrolls your device. We use that quite a lot in VMware when we send out devices to our users. Now, obviously working from home, they can enroll directly like that. We even we also do the factory provisioning side where it comes directly from the factory. So if you look at the out-of-the-box enrollment for mobile devices, the user gets a new device. He connects it to his Wi-Fi. It connects into the vendor service. It syncs the vendor's enrollment platform. But then it also, obviously that vendor service directs it to a Workspace One, which is a tenant that customer belongs to. And then the user enters their credentials and the device is enrolled, and it's configured according to whatever is specific to that user or specific to that device or use case. And it's very much the same with desktops. The same thing around that. Also, the user turns on, it goes to the device service, goes to Workspace One. The user enters their credentials, and once again, it's enrolled and secured based on corporate policies. The zero-touch enrollment from Android basically gives you that capability to getting the device directly from the reseller, and the device is automatically registered to your company. And as the user turns it on, Workspace One will start configuring it. So it makes it so much easier for you to have this type of solution available to your end users if you supply a device to the users. I know in our region we found that a lot of customers don't really provide devices to users. They actually get mobile devices. They let the users use their own devices. So the BYOD component is a lot. So the use cases are a lot higher in our region. Where in the US, for example, or even in Europe, companies provide a company phone to a user, and then that gets enrolled, or it's also previously prior enrolled. Same with Apple. Apple's device DEP process, device enrollment program. Also, once again, we had a customer locally, one of the airlines that actually got iPads directly enrolled via the DEP process from Apple into Workspace One and gets managed via that as well. And it's typically, obviously, this is around the macOS, iOS, the Apple side of the world. And those are for fully managed devices. Remember, with the Apple devices, or let's not say remember, but for your info, for Apple devices, you get the device management components. You can enroll the device, but if the device is not, for example, fully managed, then there's only certain things that you can do with it. There's another process that you need to add to fully manage the device so that you can have it as a corporate-owned device. Sorry, is there a question? I just heard someone speak. I thought there was a question. Rose, all good so far?
I think we're all good. I think there was some interference. Maybe one of the microphones were on, but I think we're good to go. Thank you, Terry.
No problem. So, out-of-the-box experience for Windows 10, we do integrate with Autopilot. I hope no one told you that Workspace One cannot integrate with Autopilot, because we absolutely can. With out-of-the-box experience, as well as integrating to Autopilot with Azure. Obviously, there's a requirement for the customer, or for the user, or for the customer, or the organization, to have a license, a P1 license in Azure. But that's the same across the board for the other solutions as well. But we absolutely do integrate with Autopilot as well. So if you are looking at doing something like that, Windows Workspace One can integrate into those onboarding methods as well. And once again, I want to reiterate that we have so many different onboarding methods that you do not have to have a Azure P1 license to onboard your devices. You do not have to have Azure to do that. We can do that completely different as well via pushing down via an automation tool, push down, or even via group policy, push down the agent or the Intelligent Hub and automatically configure it and enroll it with a staging user. In that sense, you don't have to get the user to download it or you to push it out. It's all the flexibility is there, and it really makes it so much easier for all the different use cases to be satisfied with that. Remember, I also mentioned earlier the registered mode, and this is where you just register your device. The user authenticates with the Intelligent Hub, and the Intelligent Hub was always called the AirWatch agent a couple of years ago, but we've evolved it so much so that it's not just an agent doing device management anymore or getting device information. It gives you the capability to have what we call hub services, where you can have your applications on there, a unified application catalog across the board, across the board, all your different platforms, but also all the different types of applications. But also gives you that notifications and people search capability and corporate intranet capability. But you do not, in a lot of cases, customers or users don't want to enroll their device as a BYOD device. They just want to make use of this functionality, and that's where the registered mode come into play. Yes, it registers into the mobile device management solution, but it's not managed completely. There's a couple of things that it will check. It will check if the device is not jailbroken or rooted or compromised in certain things. But it's typically gives the organization capability to know that there's a device that's being used for corporate use, but giving that user the flexibility to or giving that user the peace of mind that their personal stuff is not being compromised or actually being any intrusion into that. So it's a lot around the BYOD use case scenario. As you can see, the basic compliance at the station, it just checks if it's got a PIN, if the organization requires that. Is it jailbroken? What is the OS version, and so forth as well. It's not so much managing, pushing down payloads and configuring the device. But then we found that, in conjunction, because we're part of Dell Technologies as well, we started this process with Dell Technologies a couple of years ago, but it's obviously been evolved into the other OEMs as well. It's called factory provisioning. So if you look at the traditional PCLM side of things, it's fairly high touch. It's obviously expensive because of the high touch functionality, high touch processes, and it's not scalable. It's difficult to scale in a large scale, as well as across the different work styles to scale out how to have these devices, because that traditional PCLM, you have to image the device with a customized operating system. push down company applications, user-specific applications, policies, all sort of within the corporate network. And it's very difficult to do that if the person is not inside the corporate network. But then over-the-air management makes it so much easier, obviously, as we've been seeing throughout this presentation. As the base image is already there, and that could be a base image, not even a company base image. It could be just a base image that was loaded from a normal OEM version or a normal enterprise normal version of Windows 10, either enterprise, professional, and so forth. And then from there onwards, it can be configured. Firewalling can be configured, group policies, settings, and so forth, all over the air. And applications, policies, and updates all being pushed down as well. So instead of using WSUS for your updates, you use Microsoft Update for Business, which gives you the capability to do it over the air directly into a device outside your organization's network. So the traditional factory provisioning, or the traditional provisioning, obviously the device gets shipped to the IT department or the staging environment, potentially a partner of the customer. Then the deployment gets done. Windows 10 applications get pushed down, a base image gets pushed there. Then potentially it will go to an IT department where it could also be configured even more with regard to some more installation of applications, maybe data migration, and all kinds of other configurations that needs to happen. So it's quite a high touch with various different components in between from when the device gets shipped to when it gets to the end user. With factory provisioning, we take a lot of that pain out of or a lot of that processes out of the loop. It gets manufactured obviously at the plant. It gets configured. Gets loaded with a base image at the plant. Still, I mean that's always something that needs to happen with some operating system image. Gets obviously an asset tag gets put on into an asset report. Some BIOS settings get done, and it's then automatically enrolled into a Workspace One tenant. When it gets shipped directly to the end user without going through a reseller potentially or through a IT staging component or IT department, it can go directly to the user, even directly to their house or wherever they work from. And then, as soon as it gets delivered, the user can self-install some application, but some application will automatically be installed over the air. Because obviously when the user signs in, it will take it from the staging user to the user's own credentials, and then it will start configuring according to that profile. And then obviously a lot of customers are using things like OneDrive, SharePoint, even some Box and so forth, where most of their documentation is, and that can also then be migrated or pushed down to the device. Really a much smoother process, easier and a lot quicker and scalable for a lot of organizations. So if you look at the configuration from end user computing or from a unified endpoint management component, there's multiples of layers that need to be looked at. Obviously Wi-Fi settings, restrictions, operating system updates. Obviously, the application lifecycle management is really important because applications needs to be changed, or new applications need to be pushed, or some applications need to be retired, as well as that DLP settings that come into play as well, making sure that that you keep your data safe, and then managing the security around who can access the device. Are there pins, or security biometrics in place, or security components in place, like a password or pin, password length? Will it encrypt the device? Make sure it's encrypted. If not encrypted, is not compliant and gets reported as such. And enforcement can be done around that as well. And then making sure that you get that asset information back. Location data, if you really want to get that. In some cases, it's not not being done. And also the ownership of the device. Is it a BYOD device? Is it a corporate owned device? And then it will bring back the software inventory of the device as well. Obviously, if it's a BYOD device, you can opt as an organization to see what is installed on the device based on a privacy framework. But 90% of the time that is not being monitored. It will only be monitored what is installed via our corporate or the managed applications that's been installed. And then that software inventory will really provide a lot of information around licensing, who's using what, are the applications actually being used, what is the state of the licensing out there. And it will be picked, and you can pick up also if there's some applications that's been used that should not be used from a corporate managed device. If people go and install some personal applications on there that should be licensed and it's not licensed, and put the organization at risk, that can also be picked up and made sure that you are compliant in that sense. But then we also, apart from the application management, we also can then push down profiles, which is payloads basically to the device, and across the board from iOS, macOS, as you can see on the screen there, even Linux, we can push down payloads to configure certain things, to put certain restrictions in place, making sure you push down certificates and so forth. And it can be in a device context or in a user context. So there might be some payloads that needs to be specific to a user or a user group. Others are device specific, so it's not linked to any user. It's actually going down as a device profile and needs to be implemented irrespective of what user uses the device. And as I mentioned earlier, the smart grouping around that as well. So you can group these profiles based on various things: a user group, a device ownership type, tags that's been added to the devices, the operating system platform level, the patch level. Even OEM model, is it a Samsung, is it a LG or a Sony or whatever device? The OEM version, management type, is it a BYOD device or is it a fully managed or corporate owned device? As you can see, there's various things, and you can have exclusions on top of a smart group as well. So for example, you said all BYOD devices, or let's say all devices that's part of the Dell OEM, but we want to exclude these couple of assets, these couple of specific devices owned by these users. And then those exclusions can be put in place as well. And you can also add devices to a group that it might not pick it up automatically. You can add them manually as well. And that can be done as an automatic smart group, or you can do a manual smart group where you can manually type in or manually select the devices that you want to create in a smart group if it's not something you want to do as an automated group. And then those profiles get pushed down and apply to those devices and reported back as a successful or not successful, and troubleshooting can continue. We can also, obviously from a Windows point of view, a simple example is also the Windows Update side of things. So there you can see Windows Updates as a service, or you can link it into your WSUS system if you want. And you can configure various components around that as well. Typically, we found that a lot of customers have what we call patch rings. So they'll have the first ring, which is a small group of, or maybe a UAT environment. And then we have a second ring, which includes a couple more users, or a select group of users that typically are used as, let's say, guinea pigs for the patch. Then you have a larger group that maybe is either region-based or geographic-based or specific, a little bit larger group. And if that's successful, it will then be pushed out to the rest of the organization. So you can all configure this via this various updates, and smart groups can be created based on those settings. So the Windows Update component, and these updates get pushed down across the network, irrespective inside or outside the network. Over-the-air updates, as I mentioned, from an iOS point of view, decide when to deploy, how it's installed, how to enforce it or defer it. Those type of things can also be made use of from an iOS point of view. So iOS management for education. I mean, we really integrate very tightly into that from provision. Corporate or BYOD users, once again, that simple onboarding side of things from the device enrollment process, flexibility application deployment, either applications that's part of the App Store, from an Apple App Store, or internal applications that's been developed by developers, or purchase applications from the VPP program. And those applications can be pre-configured when pushed down, And also, if they have that single sign-on capability, we have something called mobile single sign-on that can also enable that as well. So you don't have to always type in your applications, and that links back into the user experience. And that security, the real-time security around comprehensive, data loss protection policies that can be implemented, integration into security PKI environments or certificate authorities, and auto compliance and remediation checking the whole time. So it's really making sure that, if you set those compliance policies, it's not just a once-off check. It will check continuously. If it gets breached, it will then, do whatever actions is required, what you specified, either pushing down a profile or emailing someone. And then also, if that's rectified or remediated, it will still continuously checking until maybe next time it gets into that same situation. So it's a continuous compliance check, not just a once-off. From an Android integration, I mean, we got one of the deepest integrations into Android Enterprise, as well as the Samsung Knox support. Once again, the onboarding procedures or methods are also quite extensive, from zero-touch enrollment to NFC bump, QR code, email enrollment, and so forth, linking one into the Google Play stores, creating the capability to, as with iOS and with Windows as well, upload your own internal applications, and also maybe push down that launcher to the device to lock the device if you want to do it that way, if it's a fully managed device. Integration into that Samsung Knox component is also very, very much. We've got a very deep integration with that. We've got a deep or a very close relationship with Apple, as well as Android, or Google, as well as Microsoft, from an integration point of view. If you look at managing Windows 10, it's not just the mobile device anymore. As I mentioned earlier, that unified endpoint management gives you the capability to manage Windows 10 completely, from onboarding to configuration around baselines, group policies. In some cases, like our Dell hardware, we can even do BIOS and firmware management, asset tagging based on configurations that we push down, and then updates, granular controls on major and minor updates, as well as delivery optimization of updates, peer-to-peer updating, using peer-to-peer devices updating each other after a patch has been sent to one or two devices. Also patch analysis and automation around patching as well. If you link in the patching component into the CVE intelligent or the Workspace One Intelligence component to automatically patch devices based on a common vulnerability and exposures feed priority if something gets picked up. Pushing down software, internal applications, as well as applications from our enterprise app store that we have, or enterprise, let's call it the enterprise app store. Win32 management, application management, from EXEs to MSIs to zip files, all of those type of file application packages can be installed. And then that security side, linking into the device health attestation, check if secure boot is on, is there a password, is it, all those type of checks that needs to be put in place. Also the sensors and compliance component, where we run PowerShell scripts, get a sensor or a variable back and put it into a sensor. And then that BitLocker management, encrypting the devices, but getting the recovery key back to into a secure encrypted environment, so that that recovery key can be provided to the end user if required, or if the end user logs into the self-service portal, they can get that as well. One thing that's in our tech preview that's going to be released very soon is something called the Freestyle Orchestrator. The Freestyle Orchestrator gives you a very low-code type of method to create a workflow of when a device, what needs to happen on a device. For example, install something or push down a profile. If it's not successful, then install this. Else, if it's successful, go and do some other stuff. Or if it's not successful, send an email or No, there's various things. It's like a workflow that you can push down, and that's going to be generally available in the next I think the next quarter, in the next 2 or 3 months. But it is a tech preview at the moment. It really makes it very simple for administrators and backend staff to sort of plot exactly what needs to happen, the sequence that needs to happen when a new device is enrolled, or based on various use cases. It could be different from one use case to another. One could only be profiles that be pushed down. Other one could be potentially applications profiles, as well as some configurations and so forth. But you can sequence them and make sure that sequence, and then the troubleshooting is so much easier around that as well, because it will alert you if there's something wrong in that sequence. In a lot of cases, you need to install something before something else, especially on Windows. Maybe a driver needs to be installed before a application, or there's a specific sequence. Then this can be satisfied using or creating that sequence for the end user to, or for the IT department to make sure that it happens in the right sequence. Something that I just wanted to touch on as well from a patching point of view or updates point of view is, because we link into our common vulnerabilities and exploit feed, or not ours, but the common vulnerability and exploit feed from Mitra, it can pick up if there's a critical patch required. And also it gets labeled or let's prioritized by CVE. If it's a 1 to 3, for example, it's a non-critical patch. 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 is a critical patch. In 7 to 10 is a highly critical vulnerability. And then you can decide based on that vulnerability score if you want to automatically patch via intelligence as well, instead of waiting for your IT staff to pick that up. There's an issue, it will automatically pick. It will tag those devices. It will create a group, and you can create a smart group on that, and it will automatically patch those devices for you based on that. And that's where the Workspace One Intelligence are really handy. One of the features that it provides. I mentioned earlier also we have an enterprise application repository. So VMware decided a couple of years ago that packaging applications has always been difficult for a lot of customers, either into an MSI format or into a zip format, or maybe combining it into a self-extracting EXE. So we decided to take 50 to 100 of the most used common applications, and customers can request applications on this as well. So and we found that, let's say for example Firefox, in this case the top one, German. Let's say there's a new application X, that we see a lot of customers request for that to be added. VMware will take that application, package it in the various languages, and it will send it up to the enterprise store. So all that you need to do is, when you add an application, click on Application Enterprise Store, search for the application, click on it, and it will automatically be inserted into the Workspace One engine, and you assign it to a work group. You don't have to upload it and make sure that you know the uninstall procedure and the install procedure and so forth. All of that is taken care of by the enterprise application repository. A fantastic value add, especially around the Windows 10 management side. From Mac OS, once again, cloud first, modern Mac Lifecycle Management. Integrate with that business manager, managing a Mac OS device. From the applications that have been pushed down, putting the identity and access component on top of that, pushing down applications, either on-prem internal applications, or potentially applications that you get from the stores, and also linking to File Vault from an encryption point of view as well. So we absolutely do manage those completely from an endpoint management component. So you don't have to have a third-party tool like Jamf and so forth to manage these. That's once again combining all those different components, or the different tools that I mentioned earlier, into this one unified endpoint management, and Mac Lifecycle Management is one of the ones that we mentioned there as well. We also have the Freestyle Orchestrator for Mac as well, not just for Windows, the one that I mentioned earlier around the flows. And in this case, it's instead of the little pictures that it shows or the little graphics, you can do it as a list as well. I mean, you can do the same thing with the Windows side of things as well, but this is just a different example of that. So you can also sequence that based on what needs to be happening in what sequence it needs to happen. Also, when an application, when you go into when a device is enrolled from a macOS point of view, the Intelligent Hub, you can go into that and you can actually see the progress of applications being downloaded. And you can also request an application from the Intelligent Hub if it's a locally installed application. So you can look at that process, what's happening, and make sure that the user knows what's happening from an application delivery point of view. Application management, we spoke about this throughout the presentation already. We got a various amounts of, or various use cases of applications that we can deliver, from the internal public purchase applications, web applications, and even our virtual applications, all linking into the Workspace One Access component. But if the application needs to be installed locally on the device, this can be handled. We can provide then the single sign-on capability for those applications with our mobile single sign-on functionality. We can configure those applications if that application has got an application configuration method linked to it. A lot of the store applications do have that now. We can also decide if an application is automatically delivered to an end user or if it's an on-demand application. So when they go into the app public or the corporate app store with our Workspace One Access, and it's not automatically downloaded, you can even click on it and says, please, I require this application, and download it. And if you can go as far as also maybe integrated into ServiceNow and having a request workflow, for example, to request an application that you selected. And then apply those conditional access policies as well. So managing, configuring, and deploying applications in Workspace One is extremely simple, effective, and the process is really easy and straightforward to follow. We do have our own built-in applications, containerized applications as well. You know, the Intelligent Hub is basically the onboarding. It's the agent that does everything, or the hub of the whole solution. That you can access your applications from. It's got the onboarding methods, you've got the notifications and the people search around it. But then we have various other ones as well. Our Boxer is our email client that's containerized. We got a containerized web browser, content management. We got a tunnel component where we can do a per app VPN tunnel. We can provide a per app VPN tunnel functionality. So if you launch an application, only that application's got a connection into your internal network and not the full device. VM Verify that we have there is something that that can provide two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, and that's part of the product as well. So there's various components that we have available for customers to use. Some of them are sort of integrations into Office 365, like Send, for example, to enforce Intune DLP policies. We got some application called Notebook as well, for notes and stuff like that. It's not to compete with OneNote or something like that. It's just that where some customers do not have that, they can make use of that type of application. And then obviously the cards from a business card scanner and so forth as well. These are just value adds and containerized applications that's got the software development kit embedded into it and can provide you with that functionality of DLP functionality as well. And then from a support point of view, we also have what we call Workspace One Assist. So you can remotely take over a device. For example, the issue is reported by a user. The help desk responds by accessing the device, and then Workspace One Assist comes to the rescue when you can take over the device and see what's happening on the device. Maybe the user is doing something wrong on the device, or the flow that he or the way that he connects into something, or that he does. The help desk operator can actually see on the device what's happening. So just as a final way of showing how that works, I've got a little video around that where a user will call in, the help desk operator will go in and they will go and search for the apologies, let me just play that. Oh, for some reason this does not want to play. So the user will search, they will search for the user. You can do enterprise wipe and you can do all kinds of stuff, but what will happen, they will click on the remote management side of things. It will connect into the device. The user will get a prompt for a PIN to be entered on their side, and they will ask the operator, please provide me the PIN. So the PIN is entered, and then the user will accept and share the screen. And as soon as that happens, you know, the help desk operator will be able to see what's happening on the device. They can go and do various things on the device. They can go and the user can at any time also disconnect and make sure. Now the help desk operator is on the device. They can go and do some system preferences, search for whatever they need to do, check for specific configurations. First, unlock the device. In this case specifically, it's a macOS device. So you'll unlock the device, and then go and switch on certain things that potentially were switched off or that didn't function properly. In this case, give access to Visual Studio and Calculator, or provide that as part of the logon items. And then you can all do all kinds of other stuff. You can do file transfers. You can do a whiteboarding. You can look at the processes. You can have on-screen keyboard. You can terminate some processes. You can, as I mentioned, you can also do whiteboarding on it, as well as transfer files and providing on-screen capability for the user, or highlighting certain things, and also record the session as well. So it's a really comprehensive solution with regard to managing a device or remotely assisting users on the device, and it's really very helpful in this day and age where people aren't in the office anymore and can't just run down to the IT department. Just and finally, how does our portfolio consist of the digital workspace, or that's part of the unified endpoint management consists out of the digital workspace? We got the different editions that we have, from a standard edition to a more advanced edition from a complete management point of view, where we have the enterprise edition that brings in the Workspace One Intelligence, as well as the analytics side of things. And also, obviously, we have the Horizon component from a VDI point of view. But then those add-ons that we have is for Workspace One Assist, the one that I just mentioned now, for adding, because not all customers want that or want to have got the use case for it, but it is an add-on that we can provide. And also the security to incorporate Carbon Black into this as well, so that you can use Carbon Black. And we have various 4 hosting models as well: on-prem, shared environment, a managed environment, or a latest mode environment. So it's either a dedicated environment on-prem or on-premise, or a shared environment in the cloud. Thank you very much. That is what I wanted to cover today from my IT experience, or unified endpoint management solution. Rose, any questions from your side?
Thank you, Terry. That was very comprehensive. It was a lot of good information that shared. Addresses a lot of different areas of the business in terms of the way you could provision your equipment, get them enabled for your users in a fast-track manner, as well as touching on some of the mobile support components, which is also part of business today. I can't imagine a business that don't have a reliance on mobile devices to function. So a couple of things that came up in my mind is, the first one is, what is the journey to the IT experience or modern management? I mean, it's a lot of stuff we spoke about, but if a business sat back and said, where do we start?
Absolutely. So let's look at the Windows 10 side of things from a journey point of view. So a lot of customers have got, let's say, config manager in place, and they maybe want to move to this. Then the first thing would be to have a modern management console setup, or environment setup, and then transitioning certain of the functionality across that. We got tools to do that. We got something called Airlift that can take your policies and everything across. That journey will then determine, or the journey would consist out of, is it just, firstly, let's just look at applications to get that user experience, maybe look at the Workspace One Access component, get users into the access side of things, and then move into the modern management to slowly but surely have certain use cases migrated into the modern management side, maybe your BYOD side, your mobile devices and BYOD devices into the modern management, and then from there move into your corporate devices, potentially migrating from that on-prem management tool into bring your all your collections and all your applications and so forth across, and then slowly but surely moving to that modern management. We have companies that actually switch over immediately. They enroll with their Windows 10 devices immediately, uninstall the config manager agent, install the hub, enroll automatically via group policy, push down a policy, and it enrolls and they can start managing immediately based on smart grouping that we have. But obviously, as you mentioned, there is a journey. Some customers will take it slow. They first will do the user experience component, get access to applications, the single sign-on side and things, bring in the mobile devices first, then maybe the Windows 10 devices, or maybe start per use case, maybe only start with a macOS use case and so forth. So that's always a journey, so it's not something that happens overnight.
So I like what you've said there. I mean, you've touched again on a lot of stuff, but the important thing is it's not a rip and replace solution. It's a process, and the fact that customers who've got existing Windows 10 workstations out there can on-ramp them in a process and facilitate them to go live without having to say, bring all your devices back to the office now. Let's reinstall them. It's not the case.
Absolutely.
Which I think is important. Again, in today's way of working, it's become more of a relevant matter because not everybody's coming to the office. As a matter of fact, hardly anyone is coming to the office right now. We are in high-level lockdown, so we've got minimal chance of getting people into the office. And then the productivity cost of having to reinstall a device to bring it into the modern management framework, it's not relevant because you can just do it online, all of it. So that's great. So one of the terms that get bantered around quite a bit, and it means different things to different people, and it's important to maybe understand what's the relevance of it in this particular instance. So where does zero trust fit in, and why is zero trust important?
Zero trust actually has been quite a hot topic over the last couple of years because of obviously the different work styles, people now working from wherever. Security and cyber threats is really becoming a huge issue. So zero trust is the way that we believe that customers should approach the end user estate. So do not trust anything, even if a user comes back into the office, still verify, still check, verify the location, verify the network that they're connecting from, verify their identity, verify device compliance, and always go out around, we're not trusting you until you verified and make sure that you are compliant before you can get access to the applications or internal resources. And that's where that whole zero trust, or that's how we see zero trust as trust nothing, verify first, make sure that it is that it is compliant, or that the user is compliant, or that the user can that does comply to the various checks that needs to be done before you can access anything.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I get you. Yeah. So I want to ask the users, the audience. We've got quite a nice audience out there today. A lot of names I recognize. Thank you for joining us today. Always appreciate your presence. It makes the event more interesting, and if you've got questions, then it makes it even more exciting. So if I can give the audience a chance to post any questions, you can either post in the text window, or you're welcome to just put up your hand and we'll give you the mic, so to speak. And then you're welcome to share your questions. So if you've got any questions out there, please, there must be some thoughts in your mind into how this applies to your environment or the South African context. So please feel free to post that. So Terry, I mean, the one thing that's very important to our businesses today is obviously high availability, disaster recovery, business continuity. I mean, there's a lot of terms that could talk about. And the one thing that's common when we talk about these things is we always talk about the enterprise equipment, i.e. the equipment that's back at the office or in the data center, my host, my application servers, call it what you may. When we mention the DR, you never hear anybody talking about a disaster recovery or mitigation plan that covers the end users really. Now, does this technology lend itself to create some kind of disaster recovery opportunity from an EUC perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. From an end user computing point of view, as I mentioned, we got the various different hosting methods of hosting this solution, either on-premise or in SaaS. But typically, we found that a lot of customers host this in a SaaS environment. So it's a software as a service environment. So that it itself has already got a high availability across different locations. But when it comes to sending down or provisioning policies and updates and so forth, if a back office becomes unavailable, and some of those applications cannot be accessed, or cannot be distributed, then obviously this is because it's a SaaS implementation, and it can deliver policies and applications and configurations across any network or across any location. Then it really helps a lot with, if needed to be reconfiguring devices to point to another area in a disaster environment, reconfiguring on the fly, that can then be done via this solution. It doesn't have to, users don't have to obviously come back to the office or go back to a specific location to get it reconfigured. So it really helps on configuring very quickly, or providing you the capability to reconfigure to point to your applications and resources to a DR site, instead of going manually and physically doing those configurations.
So what you're saying is it brings agility to that scenario.
That makes, agility is actually a fantastic summary of that.
Yeah. Okay. Lekker. That sounds good. Audience, any questions from anybody, or everybody still mulling over the discussion? While we're talking about disaster recovery and business recovery, etc., I came across a term called risk analytics. Now, what is risk analytics in this scenario?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of issues around cybersecurity across the world. Not just cybersecurity, but also theft and physical security as well. So from a risk and also, I mean, shadow IT and software being installed that's not really compliant. And with risk analytics, the way we look at it from a Workspace One platform point of view is, because we're managing those devices from a unified endpoint management component, we do have a lot of insights of what's happening out on the devices or out in the field. But it's not just the devices; it's also the identity of the users, as well as of these applications that's there, the device posture, the operating system, the level. So all of that can be aggregated into our intelligence engine, and then the risks can be calculated around that, and have you create dashboards around threats that's potentially out there, malware that's potentially out there, compliance issues that's out there. So really managing your risk from a compliance point of view, as well as issues around not conforming to specific security or security baselines that needs to be implemented.
Okay, so one of the words you threw out there, which is very relevant at the moment, as the 1st of July, there was the whole puppy thing that kicked the wall, or out in the industry is being enforced. Can this, and you mentioned already that it can help with compliance, but does this add value to the puppy compliance for an organization? Does it help them achieve that status?
Well, look, that's all around personal information, to ensure that your personal information is protected. And because we have a privacy framework built into our solution, we have that privacy already implemented a while, from the beginning, in fact. If you look at the GDPR in Europe, we comply completely to those, and the privacy laws there is also extremely stringent. So we absolutely do make sure that privacy from a user information point of view, is top of mind, and it can be configured by a compliance officer or auditing person to ensure that none of the personal information of the device gets shared to anyone. From a management point of view, or to IT, or to the backend system, and also that you keep it confidential on who's accessing the device, what their personal detail is, what's their email address, what their username and stuff like that. That can all be protected from that point of view. From a management point of view, not so much from, obviously, if other users get hold of the device, they could potentially, get some information. But if you lock that down the device and make sure restrictions are in place, that can also mitigate the risk.
Okay, good, interesting. I didn't think about that before. So still, any other questions from the audience? Any contributions or even statements? I mean, how are you guys handling this at the moment? Do you have a different way of doing it, maybe? So the question on encryption, you touched on encryption as well there a moment ago. And encryption is important, obviously, today. And part of the containerization of the applications and business data means also from a POPI perspective, you got that locked down. So it just can't easily be accessed externally. But how does modern management handle encryption?
So let's look at the Windows 10 side of things. So obviously BitLocker has been out there for quite a long time. And as part of the management component that we have, Unified Endpoint Management, we can ensure that encryption is done on the device, on a system partition or in a data partition. We can also now have encryption. We also have the capability to do encryption on the go, for example, to encrypt USB devices. So we can implement those encryption profiles, but also make sure that it is compliant, or the device is compliant with regard to encryption. And that's across, obviously, with macOS as well, from a file vault point of view. And we'll also check the mobile devices that has the device been encrypted. 99% of devices that have been received by users from a mobile device point of view is already encrypted. But if there's an issue with encryption, if it's not encrypted, that can be immediately reported back on, and it can be acted upon. And from a Windows encryption point of view, obviously you can decide when or what to encrypt, OS partition or data partition or both. And also we have maintenance windows for the encryption as well. So if your IT requires a window where they need to turn off the encryption for doing certain maintenance or doing something on the device, specifically where encryption will block it, then that can be done as well. We do have that in place as well, to have maintenance windows for that. So we can really make sure that that we do have make sure the device is encrypted, that the user can get to the recovery key if it's required, and if not, it can be acted upon based on a compliance policy that's been pushed out, or compliance check.
And you touched on, again, the important part of self-service as well, because often users do something wrong, and it's not a case of then reaching out to IT and creating a burden to the back office and IT, because they're also busy, but a case that they can rectify some of the issues themselves through the self-service portal.
Absolutely, yeah. So the user can sign into the self-service portal. They will get, obviously they need the credentials to do that, so it's not everyone that can get into that. But if they can get into that using their credentials, then they can get the recovery key as well. So and they don't have to do that on the device itself. They can use a third-party device, sign into a browser, sign into the self-service portal, and then get that encryption recovery key. Or in the case of a device being stolen, they can even enterprise wipe that device as well from a security point of view.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good, because I mean, this can happen on the weekend as well, and you may not have your IT team available immediately.
Sure.
So somebody can act on it. I mean, the moment you know your device is stolen, you need to, like you would do with your credit card. The moment you find your credit card is stolen, you want to block it. The same way you want to be able to block your device. Yeah. So that's what's important. Terry, what is Workspace One Intelligence?
Fantastic question. So Workspace One Intelligence is a component that we have as part of the platform that, as I mentioned earlier, get all the data from the various end user components. So the device information, data points from the device, sensors that we push from the device, as well as the identity components, as well as we link into that CVE feed, and we take all of that information together, and it will be aggregating into our Workspace One Intelligence engine that provides you the capability to create custom dashboards based on specific data points, based on your own configurations that you want to check on. We do have out-of-the-box dashboards, but also it provides you the capability to then have those have analytics done and be pushed into those dashboards, and also create customized reporting. So based on whatever data point that you want to report on, that you can report, if it's only a specific version, or if it's a specific sensor that get pushed out, or if it's a specific set of applications and so forth. Just as a couple examples, all of that stuff then can be that's fed into the intelligence engine, can provide you that capability to group them together, display them together, report on them, but also act and create automations. If you find that there's a whole lot of applications or a whole lot of devices with a specific issue, then you can automate a process to remediate that issue as well as part of intelligence. But also the intelligence will also link into other third-party tools, as I mentioned, like Carbon Black, Wandera, Pradio, ServiceNow, to also create automated workflows in creating tickets, do some remediation, automatically push patching, and automatically notifying various components of that. So the intelligence engine is sort of a step up above the unified endpoint management component, where you can have a lot of things automated. And as I say, those dashboarding, you don't want to have a million dashboards that a person needs to look at, and eventually they said, oh, there's so many dashboards, I don't really want to, it doesn't really make sense. And then they start missing things. And if you start missing things, that's when problems creeping from a cybersecurity point of view. So if intelligence is there, it's sort of like an artificial intelligence. You can act on those on behalf of the user, firstly, and secondly, you can have those intelligent dashboards specifically for specific things, and not have only one set of dashboards that report on everything, and it's information overload.
Okay.
There's one other thing that I just want to mention. Sorry, Feroz. There's also the digital employee experience management component of intelligence. So we can get information from the Windows 10 devices on OS crashes, blue screens of death, application crashes, driver crashes, and so forth, and the user experience, and aggregate that into intelligence as well. And then you can start seeing this user has got a low experience score because his device driver for his video crashed quite often, or there's a sound driver that crashed, or this application crashes quite a lot, or his boot up times are slow, and shutdown time. So there's an issue with the device. And that's one of the newer areas that we brought into Workspace One Intelligence over the last 12 months. We're a new player in that space, but from an analyst point of view, we actually are being rated quite high, irrespective if we just still the new guy on the new kid on the block regarding that. But it's part of the solution then as well, which is of great value add. You don't have third-party tools.
Yeah, you don't have to buy anything or do anything different from an application point of view. It's already there. It's evolving. I mean, I've known VMware for investing significantly in certain solution areas. This end-user compute area has been a massive investment for years now, because it's changing the way people are working. And what you're saying is that this is just part of the solution anyway, and you can tap into it for your better business function. Yeah. Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up soon, Terry. I'm not getting any questions from the audience. I mean, if the audience want to post questions in the text window, please do so. I've got one more question I want to ask, and then we're going to wrap up. And the thought came to mind around audit when we were speaking a little bit earlier. And you've got a massive tool set here of I would use the word applications and services, etc. Is there a component that talks to audits or IT audits?
So, for us, I think that the intelligence component would actually bring that into play as well, because you can go and if an audit needs to happen on what is the operating system level out there from a patch point of view, or what is the application usage for a specific application. Let's take, for example, Adobe, Adobe's Reader, for example. We found that, and I worked for a bank previously where Adobe was deployed to mostly all the users, but they didn't have licenses for those. And from an audit point of view, you can preempt that by getting asset reporting back from an application point of view, for example, and also auditing around what is the patch levels, what is the health attestation. All of that stuff can be then provided as an auditing, for audit purposes as well, to make sure that you are compliant within various areas of the auditing process. If it's application licensing, or is it patching or patch level, and so forth as well.
Or hardware even, by the sounds of it.
And hardware as well, yeah. And another thing also, I mean, from a Dell point of view, we can do the BIOS and firmware updating and so forth, and we can also report back on that as well. And if there's an issue with regard to BIOS levels out there or firmware that's not up to date, that can also be part of the auditing process.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like a total holistic solution, and it's got starting points of what the customer needs. They need to identify what is their biggest pain point or what they want to address, and they can then build on that. Absolutely. And as I mentioned, we cater for every use case, from small to enterprise. We have capabilities across all those use cases, from rugged to BYOD to corporate-owned devices. Okay, there's a question that popped up. I just want to bring it up quickly. So the question comes from Rahim. Thank you for that question, Rahim. Does device data point management go to the detail of service tags, battery health, etc.? So
So yes, in the cases of great question. So from a Dell point of view, once again, we can do that. We can link into the Dell Command Center tools for that information. But remember also that sensor component that I mentioned as well, where you can run scripts around various things that can pull information from the device and put it into a sensor. And there, one of the scripts that I've by chance saw is battery health status of devices, and then that can be pulled into a sensor, and that can be added as part of a report or audit as well, where the health level is not good enough, or up to a certain point where it seems to be substandard, and that can be reported on and be acted upon as well. In some cases, I mean, from a Dell point of view, and I apologize for bringing up Dell the whole time, because we integrate so closely with Dell as well, is the fact that because we implement or integrate into a Dell Command Center, we can actually pick up via that there's a battery health issue, and then linking into a ServiceNow desk or service desk, we can automatically log a ticket without the user even knowing about it, and then have that whole process being kicked off. And eventually the user gets contacted and says, we noticed that your device battery is not that great. Some users just, they just deal with it and they say, well, that's how it is, and we'll just carry on. But then you can maybe have that process in place to really help your end users as well.
So that talks to better end user experience. It talks to better productivity, because you can address it before there's a failure. In the case of the battery, it's already going faulty. So before it becomes a problem or something, it can be addressed. So thank you. I hope that answers the question for Raheem. It sounds quite comprehensive. If there's no further questions, I will wrap up, and I'll ask everybody else on the call to stay well, keep well, stay safe, keep your social distancing going, be good. Thank you. Thank you for your time, everybody. Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate it. And Jolene as well. Thank you for setting this up and managing it. There's a lot of work that goes into the back end. And thank you to VMware for the sponsorship.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Take care. Bye.